The Black Phone came out back in 2021 and gave us not only a new character to be terrified of, but it also gave us a debut role for Mason Thames, who, by the way, has been rising up in the ranks of Hollywood. If you're feeling surprised that that movie ended up getting a sequel, well then you and I have something in common because I didn't expect that either. Horror movie sequels don't always have the best reputation after all. But here we are, Black Phone 2 is out now in cinemas. Ethan Hawke is back as the infamous grabber, but the most important question of all is this yet another disappointing horror movie sequel, or is this something worth being excited about? Let's discuss. By far one of the best parts of this film is director Scott Derrickson's unique approach to crafting this story. I really admired how he managed to tackle a story that is honestly going to be compared to Freddy Krueger, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and yet he makes it feel fresh and it overall does not feel like it's a copycat of that already very famous franchise. When I saw the commercial and I saw, okay, now he's this undead person that's haunting your dreams, I thought, oh boy, that's brave, maybe not a good idea, but it worked out. It really did. And one of the things I think works out so well about these dream sequences is the way that the director chose to make them look. All the dream sequences in this film take on like a retro vintage look. They look very grainy. There's a lot of it looks like a really old film, and the sound direction in these scenes is just really, really exciting. It was a very brilliant way to show us that we're in a dream, and then the way it goes from those grainy scenes when we're in the dream into not being the grainy scenes, it was just a really awesome way of distinguishing when you're dreaming or when the person or the character is dreaming and when it is not. It was a very good choice, and I think it worked out really well. Black Phone 2 stars Mason Thames, Madeleine McGraw, Ethan Hawke, Jeremy Davies, and Demián Bichir. It is kind of crazy when you look at Mason Thames in this movie versus the first movie. That was only 2021, and yet he hit a full-on growth spurt. Puberty is no joke, guys. He looks completely different, and his whole temperament in this movie is very different than it was in that first movie, because after all, he went through a lot of shit in that first movie. He was kidnapped and literally almost killed, so he is a much angrier person, and he's definitely way more of a stoner. He smokes a lot of pot in this movie, and I was really on board with that. This entire cast really nails their role, including the legendary Ethan Hawke as the grabber. I swear he must be really enjoying playing villainous characters lately, because he really is starting to build up a resume for playing very complicated characters, and you're not going to get much more complicated than this character, the grabber. He is just genuinely terrifying in this movie. Scott Derrickson does an excellent job building up this story in a way that mostly feels quite organic. This movie definitely has a very awesome atmosphere, and although personally to me, I didn't really think it was very scary in the grand scheme of things, it is definitely a worthy sequel to that first movie. And what's nice is that this isn't a sequel that's trying to retread that first movie's story. This is a very different story. It has similar elements going on, but overall, it feels very, very different than that first movie. And that's good, because a lot of movie sequels in general, they try to cash in on what was popular, and you end up getting a movie that feels very similar with minor changes here and there, and then you're like, well, this is just a worse version. I don't feel like that's the case with this film. Now, I will say, if you're somebody who gets annoyed with jump scares, well, this film definitely has some of those, and they're very, very loud. The sound direction in this movie is really quite impressive. The audio when we are in these dream sequences is, like I said before, really, really cool, because it feels like you're watching like 70s horror movies, and I liked the overall impact. And if you see this movie in Dolby Cinemas, it's going to rock your socks off. I saw this in Dolby. It's the way I would recommend you see it, because this movie, you can tell the director wanted you to watch this movie loud, and loud it is. And another great thing about this film is that the story does not rush. I'm not sure exactly the exact runtime of when things played out, but it did feel like it was a good 40 minutes into this film before you actually see the grabber. But when he did show up, it was awesome, because it felt like a genuine, natural build-up, and I really, really just thought it was perfectly executed. Well, maybe not perfectly executed. I don't think there's very many films that can meet the criteria of perfection, but when he did show up, I was like, okay, let's go. I didn't want to see him win. I I really didn't want to see any of these characters get hurt, but at the same time, this is what I came for. I came to see the fucking grabber, and he did not disappoint. This film really does have a lot going for it, but at the same time, I can't quite put my finger on it. In the end, I do feel like it could have done something maybe a little bit more. I was just thinking when the movie ended, I was like, that's it? I mean, it just feels like there was more to be done. I just feel like it just kind of ended. It's not perfection by any means, but this is a very fine and extremely entertaining film and a very good use of your time for this Halloween season, because this is actually a genuinely creepy movie that has awesome atmosphere, a great cast, fantastic directing by Scott Derrickson, and it really did live up to my expectations of what I was hoping to get from this sequel to Black Phone. I was not expecting a sequel to that movie, and now that it's here, I'm actually kind of on board. If they wanted to go ahead and make a third movie, I think that he did a good enough job with this movie that I would totally sign up and go watch a third one. So it's worth a trip to the cinemas, that's for sure. For me, this movie is an 8.5 out of 10. If you saw it, go ahead and put your thoughts on it in the comments and let me know, what did you think of it? Like I said, I was really into that atmosphere. It just nailed the atmosphere. The directing was just perfect. That's the reason it's getting a fairly high score from me. If you liked this video, go ahead and hit that like button to let me know that you liked it. And if you want to hear more things from me, subscribe to this channel. Later.